What is going on, guys? Today I bring you another episode of the journey to National Master. Lately I haven't been uploading videos because there's just no tournaments or matches to play, but fortunately I managed to get myself into a closed tournament in the classical format. So yeah, slow chess, the perfect chess. And this is the first round of that tournament, which, as I said, is a closed tournament with 9 players. And I'm gonna leave a picture with all the ratings. Actually, it's a pretty balanced tournament, and a lot of 1500s, to 1600s, including me. And pretty nice field, honestly. And I'm gonna be able to test my strength against people with similar rating, which is always good. But yeah, let's see. Yesterday I played this game and I also played round 2, so round 2 is gonna come out sometime later this week. And let's see, I had a white pieces and I started the match with c4. And I know what you're probably already thinking. What is going on, Rick? Why are you playing something new again? And it's true, I just can't really stop playing just different openings. I never played c4 in my life in any classical or over the board tournament, and I decided to try it out. Looked at it a bit, and I was liking the games that I saw and the position. So let's see how the game went. My opponent responded with e5, which is one of the main moves. I went g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and my opponent goes c6. And here, I started thinking for a while, and I kind of figured out that we were probably gonna follow a line that is pretty theoretical, and I really didn't know much theory, but I thought, okay, it can't be that bad, and I'll probably manage to come out with something decent. The line that I'm talking about is after knight f3 here, the most natural move for black is e4, and after knight d4, just to break in the center with d5. And here there's quite a few possibilities, but the most common is c takes d5, and after something like queen takes d5, I have to play knight c2 or e3, and it's a game of chess. As impressive as it sounds, it's just a game of chess. But I probably need to look at it for future games if I intend to play the English again. But here my opponent surprised me already with d6, which it's also a playable move. It's a little bit more passive, and I kind of was happy to see that, because I knew that this wouldn't be a problem compared to e4 directly. So here I just played d3 to stop any kind of e4, and my opponent played bishop e7, pretty simple, just developing with knight c3, knight bd7, castles, and I just want to point out one thing, which is I think that happens to a lot of people that play over the board tournaments. Here, for example, just a detail that I feel like it's interesting. Here I could have just castled right, which probably wouldn't make any difference, but I didn't want to castle just yet, because when I'm playing these over the board tournaments and these slow games, I always wonder, like, am I going to risk something if I castle too soon? Because now my opponent can start with h5, and I looked at this a bit. Do I go h4 here? Do I just ignore with knight c3? Do I allow h4? But yeah, normally all this stuff really doesn't work this early in the game. I just wanted to share that it does happen quite a lot that people just wait for the other person to castle and to commit first, because they are afraid of just a straight up attack on their king. Just a small detail which I think it's nice to share, but let's keep going. After knight bd7, I finally grew some balls and I played castle. My opponent immediately also castled, and here I go e4, which Looks a bit weird at first if you haven't really checked these positions, but yeah, this is just pretty standard in this type of Englishes, which I think believe this is called the Botvinnik system. And yeah, the idea is to just, you know, play bishop e3 and break with d4, open the game up. But yeah, in the at first it kind of looks weird because I'm putting my pawns on light squares and I'm kind of blocking my own bishop. But you know, it's a slow maneuvering game, which yeah, gives pretty double-edged positions and nice positions. But yeah, here I went e4, and my opponent goes knight c5, which is a nice move, you know, developing the knight to a better square. And yeah, this move I felt like it threatened a pretty nasty positional threat of bishop g4 here, so I went h3. Let me just illustrate what I was worried about. Let's say I play a random move like rook b1 here. I was afraid that after let's say bishop g4 and h3, I was afraid that he could just simply take this this knight. And the problem after bishop takes f3 is that the knight that I had on f3 was helping me push through with d4, and now it's a little bit harder to play d4, because let's say knight e6, I can't go d4 directly because you know, I don't have a knight protecting the d4 square, although I could probably try something like bishop e3 and then go for d4, but then again I would have to give up this bishop for the knight. So yeah, I didn't really want to allow the trade of this light square bishop for the knight, because I really wanted to succeed with my d4 plan in a natural way. So I just played h3, which I felt was very logical. And here my opponent played bishop d7, which looks kind of weird. You might ask, why doesn't he play bishop e6? Helps support also the d5 break that black wants. But the thing here is that now, like, this knight is kind of misplaced here, because the knight really wants to go to e6 to control the d4 square, as we talked before. And after something like bishop e6, I think just b4 is a pretty nasty move, which kind of forces the knight to go back to either d7 or a6, which, let's say for example a6, rook b1. I mean, this knight just looks very sad here, and it's definitely something that you don't want. But it would still be a game. It wouldn't be that big of a deal, honestly. It's a slow position. But yeah, my opponent goes bishop d7, which I feel like it's completely fine as well. I played the best move, rook e1. I really wanna prepare d4, and I couldn't go d4 straight away because this pawn on e4 was hanging, although the computer manages to still do it. Let's say knight takes on e4, knight takes on e4, knight takes on e4, and here pawn takes on e5. If he recaptures, you know, there's big trouble. But actually there's f5 here, and you know, the game gets very complicated here, and yeah, it's kind of unclear. But I didn't want to go. I just wanted to stay solid and first protect the pawn on e4, not allow any knight captures on e4. And here my opponent goes queen c8, just attacking the pawn on h3. I defended it with king h2, and now after rook e8, I really had the opportunity to go d4, and for some reason I of course was looking at it, but I didn't end up playing d4. I don't know, for some reason after d4 takes, I thought that you know, I was worried about bishop f8 with some pressure on e4, although, you know, he has 3 attackers, I have 3 defenders, so there's really nothing going on. I can even just go something like, I don't know, b4 probably. b4 it looks good. And yeah, but for some reason I thought that it was better to first develop the bishop on e3, and so after rook e8 I played bishop e3, and I thought, okay, I still get my d4 break. And here I actually ended up realizing that I was threatening to take the knight and then take the pawn on e5, which it was kind of nice. But here my opponent defended with queen c7. I played queen c2, just defending the pawn on e4 in order to push d4. And here my opponent played knight e6, and I finally broke with d4. And yeah, my opponent, I was expecting e takes on d4 and a lot of exchanges on d4, but my opponent surprised me with c5, which is actually the best move in the engine. I really didn't see this idea until he played it, and but okay, I mean, no big deal. I just took the pawn on e5, we traded pawns on e5, and here I just planted my knight on d5. And now I ask my opponent a question: do you want to take on d5 or do you want to move your queen? Yeah, it's a tough decision to make. Actually, my opponent played the best move. You know, my opponent played queen b8. My opponent has 0 elo, but he's actually a pretty strong player, and he actually played really well in this game. So yeah, he's definitely not a beginner, even though he has 0 elo. He definitely knows his way around the chessboard for sure. But yeah, after knight d5, the problem with taking on d5 immediately is that after c takes on d5, this knight can't go to d4, because let's say he goes to d4, I can actually just win a pawn straight up with knight takes d4, and after e takes d4 I can actually just take the pawn because this queen is undefended, and yeah, if he takes the bishop he loses the queen. But my opponent actually saw this, and he played queen b8. And here, you know, I briefly thought about taking the bishop or taking knight, but these are just bad moves. I'm actually just you know, giving up a good piece for a bad piece. No, there's no way I would actually do that. But yeah, I tried to see if there was any tactic involving winning a pawn, but there's really nothing here. And this is a critical position in the game, because yeah, now I have to make a decision on what I do. And yeah, it's the only thing I know is that my opponent next move is gonna play knight d4, and I have to deal with that knight being planned on d4, just like he has to deal with my knight on d5. And these positions are always complicated for me and very much like double-edged. In here I thought about b4, which is actually one of the best moves in the engine, but after b4 and c takes b4 I actually couldn't see anything concrete. But yeah, after c takes on b4 actually the engine just says queen b2, and yeah, this makes sense, because now if he goes with the knight on d4 I just take everything on d4 and there's really nothing for him. And also I'm attacking this pawn on e5 twice and also putting pressure on b4, and yeah, this would actually be a pretty decent position for me, although bishop d6 kind of protects everything. And yeah, this is just complicated. But actually I ended up playing a very bad move, which was rook 2. And yeah, this is probably my worst move of the game so far, because yeah, it's obvious. It just allows knight d4, which my opponent immediately played. But my idea was that I would just take this knight on d4 as I did, and after c takes on d4 I would play knight e1. And yeah, my idea was just to put the knight on d3, blockade the pawn, and eventually, you know, play f4 and break his center. And that was the old master plan that I thought of. But yeah, the problem with this is it is just slow and allows my opponent to just regroup and actually be completely fine with the bishop pair. Here my opponent correctly plays knight takes on d5, and I didn't think for a long while here, and I just played e takes on d5, which is actually another big mistake, because now my opponent can just my opponent has a really good move that just takes over the game and puts me on the back foot, which I completely I didn't miss it. I actually saw it, but I thought that it wouldn't be as big of a deal as it actually is, which yeah, my opponent just has f5 and the pawns are really looking strong and scary. But I have to be honest, I thought that in my calculation, I thought that I was in time with knight d3, which just immediately blunders this simple tactic of the fork, and here I had to give up the piece for the pawns. This didn't happen in the game, but in my calculation, for some reason, I thought that f5 wasn't a big deal, but in reality, is actually a pretty big deal, because this is not pleasant for white, and black is just straight up better. But my opponent, to my luck, actually played an horrible move. He played f6, and now, like, I'm way better because I am in time to actually stop his pawns. And here I just played bishop e4 after a long, after quite a decent amount of time. And here my idea was that at first I thought, okay, if he plays g6 trying to play f5, I said, okay, I'll probably just make a draw. That my idea was to sacrifice the bishop on g6, and after this I thought, okay, I mean, if I reach this position, I will think for a while, because I have a draw whenever I want. I can just give a perpetual here. If this happens, it's just a draw, but of course it would be my move, and I would have quite a long time still to think about any other possibilities. Actually, this, funny enough, this is completely winning. The computer says that after queen g6, king f8, just knight d3, and yeah, the computer says that this is actually just straight up winning for white, which is kind of amazing. If he plays g6, I will definitely sacrifice immediately, and then I'll think about it. If we end up drawing, okay, it's fine, whatever, no big deal, But here my opponent actually played h6, which, yeah, it's surprised me a bit, but okay, he doesn't want to draw, which is completely fair. And here I thought for a while I didn't really know what to do. This is actually a pretty unbalanced position and pretty random, actually. You don't see this often. And yeah, here I thought for a long time I was just trying to come up with a plan, and I thought about bishop f5, trading the bishops, but I didn't like it, because after bishop f5 here, I think that he can even play something like queen c8, and I just wasted the tempo with bishop f5, and his light squares are so weak that I don't want to trade my light square bishop for his light square bishop, because this bishop is actually very important in order to create threats against black. For example, also this bishop is just eyeing, it's just a wooden shield, like Hikaru says. But here I actually ended up coming up with a very nice move, which I saw after calculating some lines. I actually played c5, and c5 is actually a very good move, which forces my opponent to come up with something. Actually, there's a trap here that I want to show that I calculated. You can say, okay, c5, what's the big deal? Just rook c8, and how are you gonna defend this pawn? Are you gonna play b4 because a5 is coming, and this is not pleasant at all. After rook c8, I can actually go d6. And you might say, but the pawn is pinned. Like if you take the bishop, you lose the queen. Exactly, that's right. But the problem is that when the bishop takes on d6, I have this intermediate check, just getting out of the rook's vision, checking the king, forcing him to move his king because he can't really protect with the bishop. So let's say king h8, and now I take the bishop, and after queen takes, I'm just up a piece, right? I'm just totally up a piece. And yeah, so this was a nice trap that I kind of set up. And here my opponent, like, just after quite a long thing, he just played queen c7, which is even worse. And yeah, I was very confused here because now I just have d6, and here my opponent resigned. Actually, I thought for a while I didn't play d6 immediately. Of course I was gonna play d6, but I was thinking that after d6, bishop takes on d6, I didn't know if I wanted to recapture immediately or if I wanted to give a check first. But I thought that, like, a pawn captures on d6, queen captures on d6, and I was kind of looking at this position because, you know, I can grab a pawn here, I can give a check. But yeah, I was kind of scared because, you know, if I move the queen out of this diagonal, then maybe f5 is coming, and then e4, and then d3, and yeah, I still thought that actually it wouldn't be easy to play this position out, even up a piece, because of his pawns just marching down the board. But here my opponent after d6 just resigned, which, yeah, you know, I was happy to of course see. But yeah, it was a very interesting game, actually, mistakes from both parts. But yeah, we started the tournament with a win, which is always nice. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of very complicated game. It was quite short, 23 moves, but it was pretty complicated, and I really have to look into these English positions because, yeah, this is totally out of my comfort zone. Yeah, I'm not used to it, to these structures, but then again, it is a good learning experience to play different openings. But yeah, this was the video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, later this week the second round will come out. Bye bye, take care.